These are the instructions on how to create a mosaic bird bath. This is what the final bird bath looks like when it's all completed. I decided to create a layer of mosaic inside of a bird bath that I created in a pottery class. I wear safety goggles when working with epoxy and used a cardboard container for the epoxy. You could also use a piece of cardboard. This is the epoxy I used. I used round beads for the mosaic. You can get these at a local craft shop. You could also use flat glass that is used for stained glass if you want to. I started by cleaning the surface to make sure it was clean and dry. I mixed some epoxy according to the directions on the package. Then I used a stick to put the epoxy onto the back of a glass bead. You could also use a popsicle stick. I wanted to put a large fish in the mosaic, so I drew an outline of the image on the ceramic and started with the glass bead for the eye. I followed the general outline from there. After placing the eye, I then moved on to the center of the body and worked my way out. I placed glass beads around the center area as I worked. You can see here a progression of placing glass beads. I added the center of the tail and then just kept working. This is just more placing of glass beads for the fish. This is what the fish looked like when all the beads were set in place. Once the fish was done, I started on the blue water beads and green beads for reeds. I added many colors of blue to make it interesting, but you could also use one color if that's what you prefer. This is more progression of placing glass beads. This is what the whole mosaic looked like once all the glass beads were placed. At this point, I let this set for a couple of days so that it could completely dry. Once dry, I used a pre-mixed grout from the local hardware store. I pressed the grout by hand into all the crevices between the glass beads. I then worked my way from the center out until the whole thing was covered. Once all of it was covered with grout, I worked to wipe the excess off. After the excess was wiped off, I worked with a damp sponge and wiped more of the grout off to reveal the glass beads underneath. Keep rinsing the sponge till the beads are clean with no residue of grout. The grout does dry while working, so it's important to keep at it and smooth out the edges before the grout is completely dry. This is what it looked like once all the grout was in place. Once again, I let it sit a few days till the grout was completely dry. Once dry, I used grout and tile sealer from the local hardware store to make it watertight. I really wanted this sealer to soak in as much as possible, so I poured some onto the surface and then went over it with a white cloth to really soak all the areas thoroughly. Once that was done, I let it dry again a few more days. When it was dry, I put water in it and put it out for the birds. Not too bad for my first try at making a mosaic bird bath. Hope this helps you get started on your project.